Captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the observation deck window, watching the massive alien structure grow larger as their exploration vessel approached. The thing was enormous, easily 10 kilometers long and shaped like a crystalline flower, with petals made of some unknown metal that seemed to shift colors in the starlight.
"My God," whispered Dr. Marcus Webb, the team xenoarchaeologist, standing beside her. "Look at the size of that thing. It's been drifting in this empty system for who knows how long." Sarah had seen her share of ancient alien ruins during her 15 years with the Deep Space Exploration Corps, but nothing quite like this. Most alien artifacts they discovered were either completely dead or so damaged by time that they barely functioned. This one looked pristine, as if it had just rolled off some cosmic assembly line yesterday. "Any signs of life?" she asked. Lieutenant Tom Rodriguez, their sensor operator. "Negative, Captain. But the strange thing is, I'm not reading any decay either. No radiation damage, no micrometeor impacts, nothing. It's like this thing has been sitting in a protective bubble for millennia." Their ship, the UES Curiosity, was small compared to the alien vessel, a research craft designed for extended deep space missions with a crew of 12. They had been mapping this remote star system when their long-range sensors picked up the anomaly. What they found defied everything they knew about space travel and alien technology. Dr. Elena Vasquez, their lead physicist, was frantically taking readings from every instrument they had. "Captain, these energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. The hull appears to be made of a material that's somehow self-repairing, and there's definitely power running through it. Though I can't determine the source." Sarah made her decision. "All right, people, we're going aboard. This could be the discovery of the century, but we do this by the book. Full environmental suits, constant comm contact, and nobody touches anything without clearance from the science team." 2 hours later, Sarah found herself floating in the alien ship's docking bay, if that's what it was. The space was vast and eerily beautiful, with flowing curves and organic shapes that seemed more grown than built. Bioluminescent panels provided soft blue-white light that pulsed gently like a slow heartbeat. "Air composition is breathable," reported Dr. Vasquez through the comm. "Gravity is approximately Earth normal. Temperature is a comfortable 21 degrees Celsius. It's almost like this place was designed for us." The exploration team moved carefully through corridors that seemed to adapt to their presence, with lighting that brightened as they approached and dimmed after they passed. Everything was clean, pristine, waiting. The walls showed intricate patterns that might have been decorative or functional, possibly both. "Captain," Dr. Webb's voice carried a note of excitement.
"You need to see this." Sarah followed his signal to what appeared to be a control room or bridge.
The space was circular, with multiple levels connected by ramps that spiraled around a central column. Workstations, at least Sarah assumed they were workstations, were arranged in perfect harmony around the room. But what caught her attention immediately was the obvious pilot's position at the center. The chair, if it could be called that, was a graceful sculpture of the same color-shifting metal as the ship's hull. It was sized perfectly for a human, which was impossible. Behind it, a massive transparent screen showed the star field outside, but with annotations and markers and symbols that hurt to look at directly. "This is incredible," Dr. Webb continued. "Look at the proportions, the ergonomics. Everything suggests the beings who built this ship were roughly humanoid in size and shape, but our dating suggests this vessel is at least 200,000 years old. Humans barely had fire that long ago." Sarah approached the pilot station cautiously. As she drew near, panels began to light up around the chair, displaying incomprehensible symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and change even as she watched them.
"Careful, Captain," warned Dr.
Vasquez. "The power readings just spiked. Something's responding to your presence." But Sarah was transfixed. There, on what was obviously a control panel, was a single button. It stood out from everything else. Simpler, more straightforward, almost mundane compared to the alien complexities surrounding it. It was about the size of her thumb, glowing with a soft green light that pulsed in the same rhythm as the ship's lighting. "That button wasn't active before," reported Rodriguez. "It only started glowing when the captain approached." Dr. Webb was practically bouncing with excitement. "This could be some kind of activation sequence. A startup procedure. The ship might be recognizing the captain as a potential pilot. Or it could be a self-destruct," Sarah said grimly. "We don't know anything about these beings or their technology. For all we know, this ship could be a weapon of mass destruction." The team spent the next 6 hours exploring the vessel and taking detailed scans of everything they could find. The ship appeared to have living quarters,
what might have been recreational areas, storage holds, and engineering sections.
Everything was functional but dormant, waiting for something to wake it up. In the crew quarters, they found evidence of the ship's original occupants. Skeletal remains, perfectly preserved, of beings that were indeed roughly humanoid but with elongated limbs and larger skulls. Their clothing had long since decayed, but personal items remained: jewelry, tools, what might have been books made of a material that felt like stone but was flexible as paper. They were explorers. Dr. Webb concluded after examining the artifacts. Look at these star charts, these instrument designs.
This was a scientific vessel, possibly on a mission similar to our own. As the hours passed, Sarah found herself drawn repeatedly back to the bridge and that single, glowing button.
The ship's systems seemed to recognize her specifically. Panels that remained dark for other crew members would light up when she approached, and the pilot's chair had actually adjusted its shape slightly when she stood near it. Captain, Dr. Vasquez said during their debrief back on the Curiosity, I've been analyzing the ship's energy patterns. Whatever power source it uses, it's beyond our current understanding. The efficiency is off the charts. A ship that size should require massive fuel storage, or a fusion reactor the size of a city block, but I can't find anything like that. What are you suggesting? Sarah asked. I think this ship uses some form of zero-point energy extraction. Theoretical stuff that we're decades away from developing. But the readings don't lie. This thing could potentially travel for millions of years without refueling. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his analysis station. Captain, there's something else. I've been monitoring subspace communications and we're starting to get some interest from other parties. Word is leaking out about our discovery. Sarah's blood ran cold.
In the 3 days since they'd found the alien ship, she'd filed preliminary reports with Earth Command as required, but she'd kept the more sensitive details classified, knowing that news of such a discovery would attract attention from parties with less pure motives than scientific curiosity.
What kind of interest, she asked. Corporate survey fleets from the outer colonies mainly, but also some military signatures that don't match any friendly forces. Pirates probably, or maybe corporate mercenaries. We've got maybe 2 days before the first ships arrive. Sarah stared out at the alien vessel through the observation windows. 200,000 years it had waited in this empty system. 200,000 years of silence, of patience, of keeping its secrets. And now, human greed and politics were about to turn it into a battlefield. She thought about the remains they'd found, the evidence that the ship's original crew had been explorers like themselves. They had been seekers of knowledge, travelers among the stars, beings who had built something beautiful and functional and then, for reasons unknown, had never made it home. Captain, Dr. Webb's voice interrupted her thoughts. I've been going through the xenolinguistics data we gathered. I think I'm starting to understand some of the symbols we found. It's preliminary, but there are patterns that suggest this ship was part of a larger expedition. They were mapping unexplored regions, documenting new worlds. Just like us, Sarah murmured. Exactly like us. And Captain, there's something else. Based on the star charts we found, I think I know where they came from. There's a system about 50 light years from here that matches the astronomical references in their navigation data. If we're right, and if their civilization still exists, we'd be looking at first contact with an active alien civilization. Sarah finished. The implications were staggering. First contact protocols existed, but they were theoretical. Humanity had never encountered another spacefaring species, but first, they had to deal with the immediate problem. Other ships were coming, and not all of them would share the Curiosity's scientific mission. Some would want to claim the alien vessel for themselves, to strip it for technology or sell it to the highest bidder. Sarah made her decision. Dr. Vasquez, what would happen if someone tried to force their way aboard the alien ship? Could they damage it? Possibly. The hull seems incredibly strong, but directed energy weapons or explosive charges could potentially breach it. And if they started cutting into systems they didn't understand, she shrugged. The ship has maintained itself for 200,000 years. Crude interference could shut it down permanently. Or worse, added Dr. Webb. We still don't fully understand the power source. If it's destabilized. Sarah nodded grimly. She looked around at her team. Scientists and explorers all. People who had dedicated their lives to pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. They understood what was at stake here. All right, people. We have a choice to make. We can wait for the cavalry to arrive and hope that Earth Command gets here before the pirates do. We can try to tow the ship back to human space, though I doubt our little survey vessel has the power for that. Or, she paused, looking out at the alien vessel one more time. Or I can go back over there and press that button. The silence in the room was deafening. Dr. Webb was the first to speak. Captain, we have no idea what that button does. It could activate the ship's propulsion or its weapons,
or it could trigger some kind of automated sequence that we don't understand.
Or, Sarah said quietly, it could wake up the ship and give us a chance to learn from its builders, to understand their technology, their culture, their purpose, to honor their memory by completing their mission. She stood up, her decision made. I'm going back over there. If those pirates show up and try to board that ship with cutting torches and explosives, they'll destroy something irreplaceable. But if the ship is active, if it's under someone's control, you're talking about stealing an alien starship, Rodriguez said bluntly. I'm talking about saving it, Sarah replied.
And maybe learning something that could change the course of human history. 2 hours later, Sarah Chen stood once again on the bridge of the alien vessel, her hand hovering over the mysterious green button. Her team was back on the Curiosity, monitoring the situation and ready to react to whatever happened next.
The button pulsed gently, almost invitingly. Around her, the ship waited in patient silence, its systems humming with potential energy. Through the transparent screen, she could see the Curiosity keeping station nearby, and beyond that, the infinite starfield where humanity was just beginning to make its mark. Sarah thought about the explorers who had built this ship, who had traveled so far from home in search of knowledge and understanding. She thought about her own crew, dedicated scientists who had followed her into the unknown. She thought about the approaching ships and the choice between discovery and exploitation. She pressed the button. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Light flooded through the ship as systems that had slumbered for millennia suddenly came online. The gentle pulse of the ship's heartbeat accelerated, and Sarah felt a subtle vibration through the deck as massive engines began their startup sequence. The pilot's chair flowed around her like liquid metal, conforming perfectly to her body and creating connections she hadn't expected. Information flooded her mind, not painful, but vast and complex beyond anything she had ever experienced. She could suddenly sense every system on the ship, feel the flow of energy through conduits she had never seen, understand the purpose of technologies that human science was centuries away from developing. And she could sense something else, a presence, ancient and patient, that had been waiting in the ship's quantum consciousness for someone worthy to take the helm. Not the ship's original crew. They had been gone for far too long. But someone who understood the value of exploration, of discovery, of pushing beyond the known boundaries. Someone human. The universe suddenly seemed much larger and much smaller at the same time. Through the ship's sensors, Sarah could perceive not just the local star system, but the quantum threads that connected all matter and energy across the galaxy. She could see the approaching human ship still days away and something else. Something vast and ancient stirring in the deep void between the stars. The ship's previous occupants hadn't just been explorers. They had been guardians, watching for something that had been sleeping in the dark places of the galaxy. Something that was finally beginning to wake up. And now, Sarah Chen, a human starship captain from a species that had barely learned to walk among the stars, was the ship's new guardian. The responsibility was overwhelming, but as the alien vessel began to move with grace and power beyond anything humans had ever built, she knew there was no turning back. The real adventure was just beginning. The transformation was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. As the alien ship's consciousness merged with her awareness, she found herself seeing the universe through senses that didn't exist in human biology. The vessel, she now knew its name was something that roughly translated to Star Whisper, was alive in ways that transcended simple artificial intelligence. Through the ship's quantum sensors, she could perceive the approaching human vessels as bright dots of crude fusion energy, their metal hulls radiating the chaotic signatures of barely controlled technology. They were still 36 hours away, but their intent was clear even at this distance. 3 corporate survey ships, 2 military escorts and something else. A sleek vessel that registered as completely neutral to most sensors, but showed predatory intent to the Star Whisper's more sophisticated detection systems. Captain. Rodriguez's voice came through her comm unit, thick with panic. The alien ship just lit up like a Christmas tree. Power readings are off the charts, and it's moving. Are you all right in there? Sarah tried to respond, but found that her connection to the ship made ordinary speech feel clumsy and limited. Instead, she reached out with her newfound abilities and touched the Curiosity's communications array directly, speaking through the ship's systems in a voice that was still recognizably her own but carried harmonics that no human throat could produce. I'm fine, Tom. Better than fine. We have a problem. Those ships approaching aren't just treasure hunters. One of them is carrying something that the Star Whisper recognizes as a threat. On the Curiosity's bridge, Dr. Vasquez was frantically checking her instruments. Elena to all stations, The quantum resonance readings just spiked beyond anything I've ever seen. Captain, whatever that ship did to you, you're now giving off energy signatures that match theoretical predictions for consciousness transfer technology. Dr. Webb's voice cut in over the comm. Consciousness transfer? Are you saying the captain's mind has been merged with the alien ship? Sarah could sense their fear and confusion, but also their scientific curiosity. Through the Star Whisper's memory banks, she accessed records of similar mergers that had taken place over the millennia. The ship had been designed by a species called the Architects beings, who believed that the boundary between organic consciousness and quantum mechanical systems was an artificial limitation. Not merged, Sarah explained, her amplified voice carrying through both ships' communication systems. Enhanced. I'm still me, but I can perceive and understand things that were impossible before. And what I understand is that we're all in danger. She directed the Star Whisper's sensors toward the approaching vessels and shared the data with her crew. The seemingly neutral ship was indeed a threat. Its hull contained containment fields designed to hold quantum-coherent organisms, and its crew's neural patterns showed the distinctive signatures of the Harvesters. The name came to her through the ship's ancient memory banks, along with images of cosmic horror that made her human mind recoil. The Harvesters were the reason the Architects had built ships like the Star Whisper. They were entities from the quantum foam between realities, beings that fed on consciousness itself and had been slowly consuming civilizations across the galaxy for millions of years. They had found the Architects' homeworld 200,000 years ago. We have to warn Earth, Sarah said, her consciousness now fully integrated with the ship's vast computational abilities. The Harvesters don't just destroy worlds, they consume the quantum substrate of consciousness itself. Everyone who dies becomes part of them, aware but helpless. Through the Star Whisper's sensory arrays, she could perceive the Harvester vessel more clearly now. It was beautiful in a terrible way, its hull seeming to shift between dimensions as it moved. Inside, she could sense the presence of thousands of consumed minds, including. Her heart sank as she recognized the neural patterns. Several hundred humans. The Harvesters had already begun their infiltration of human space. Dr. Coxa-Gill. Webb's voice was shaky as he responded. Captain, the data you're transmitting. Some of this is consistent with anomalous readings we've been getting from the outer colonies over the past year. Ships disappearing. Colonies going silent with no distress calls. Exploration teams just vanishing. Because the Harvesters don't destroy technology, Sarah explained grimly. They harvest the people and leave everything else intact. To anyone investigating, it looks like the colonies were simply abandoned voluntarily. Lieutenant Rodriguez was monitoring the approaching ships more closely now. Captain, the lead corporate vessel is the Meridian Dawn, flagged out of Titan Corporation. They're transmitting standard salvage claims and demanding we vacate the area. But that neutral ship isn't responding to any hails. Through the Star Whisper's consciousness, Sarah reached out and touched the Harvester vessel's quantum signature. The contact sent shivers of revulsion through her enhanced awareness. The ship wasn't just crewed by Harvesters. It was partially composed of them, its hull incorporating the quantum essence of consumed civilizations. But she also sensed something else. Surprise. The Harvesters had expected to find a dead Architect vessel, one they could strip for technology and consciousness storage matrices. They hadn't expected to find an active ship with a human pilot. They're scanning us, she warned her crew, trying to understand what we are. The good news is that they can't figure out how a primitive species like humanity managed to activate an Architect vessel. The bad news is that they're extremely interested in finding out. The Star Whisper's weapons systems came online automatically as the ship's defensive protocols activated. Sarah found herself with access to technologies that made human weapons look like stone knives. Quantum disruptors that could unravel matter at the subatomic level. Dimensional phase cannons that could strike targets in parallel universes. Consciousness bombs that could reduce entire crews to mindless husks. But she also understood, through the ship's inherited wisdom, that using such weapons would announce humanity's existence to every Harvester in the galaxy. The Architects had learned that terrible lesson when they first fought back against their cosmic predators. Violence drew more violence, and the Harvesters had unlimited patience. Captain, Dr. Vasquez's voice carried a note of desperate hope. I'm reading massive quantum fluctuations around the alien ship. Are you able to control its movement? Sarah smiled, though her crew couldn't see it through the environmental suit's faceplate. Control was too simple a word for what she could do now. The Star Whisper responded to her thoughts as if it were an extension of her own body, its vast bulk moving with the grace of a dancer despite its size. Better than control, she said. I can make it sing. She reached out with the ship's consciousness and touched each of the approaching vessels in turn. The human ships were easy to read. Basic encryption, simple neural patterns, straightforward motivations of greed and curiosity. The harvester vessel was more complex. Its quantum signature twisted through dimensions that human mathematics could barely describe.
But the Star Whisper had been built to fight such entities. Listen carefully. Sarah transmitted to all the approaching ships simultaneously. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Curiosity, currently operating as pilot of the Architect vessel Star Whisper. All ships are advised that this system is under Architect protection protocols and that hostile actions will be met with appropriate responses. The corporate ships immediately began transmitting legal challenges and salvage rights claims. The military escorts activated their weapons systems. The harvester vessel remained ominously silent. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, Sarah watched the quantum mechanical dance of probability waves collapsing into reality as the harvesters made their decision. They began powering up weapons that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Weapons designed to slice through consciousness itself. All human vessels. Sarah broadcasted immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance. That ship is not what it appears to be, and you are not equipped to fight it. Commander Jackson of the military escort Perseus responded first. Captain Chen, by what authority do you claim control of that alien vessel? Earth Command has issued specific orders regarding the securing of xenotechnology, by the authority of being the only thing standing between humanity and extinction. Sarah replied grimly. Trust me, Commander, you do not want to be here when this gets started. But the corporate ships were already moving into position, their captains blinded by greed and the promise of alien technology worth trillions of credits. The Meridian Dawn deployed mining drones equipped with cutting lasers, apparently planning to carve samples from the Star Whisper's hull. The harvester vessel chose that moment to drop its disguise. Reality twisted as the ship's true form became visible, a writhing mass of consumed souls held together by quantum coherent hate, its surface covered in what looked like faces pressed against the inside of a membrane. The mining drones simply ceased to exist as they passed through the creature's dimensional distortion field.
What in God's name is that? Commander Jackson's voice had lost all its professional composure. That, Sarah said, is what the architects were trying to protect the galaxy from. The harvester thing attacked without warning, launching projectiles that weren't quite matter and weren't quite energy. They passed through the Perseus's shields like they weren't there and struck the ship's crew quarters. Sarah watched in horror as the vessel's life signs simply vanished, not died, but ceased to exist in any meaningful way. The Star Whisper responded before Sarah even consciously decided to fight. Quantum disruptors lanced out, striking the harvester creature and causing it to recoil in apparent surprise. For the first time in eons, something had actually hurt it. All ships withdraw immediately, Sarah commanded, but it was too late. The other corporate vessels were firing their weapons at both the harvester and the Star Whisper, apparently unable to distinguish between them. Their projectiles were like gnat bites to the ancient ship, but they served to complicate an already chaotic situation. Through her enhanced consciousness, Sarah felt the Star Whisper's defensive systems fully activate. The ship had been dormant for 200 millennia, but it had been designed for exactly this type of encounter. Armor plating that existed in 16 dimensions simultaneously shrugged off attacks that would have vaporized planets. Weapons that fired coherent space-time itself reached out toward the harvester creature. The battle was terrible and beautiful, fought with energies that twisted the local structure of reality. The Star Whisper moved like a living thing, dancing between attacks that would have destroyed solar systems, while striking back with precision that was almost artistic in its perfection. But Sarah could sense that the harvester was merely testing her defenses, probing for weaknesses while calling out through quantum foam to its kin. Dozens of similar entities were already responding, converging on this system from across the galaxy. Captain, Dr. Webb's voice was tight with fear. The quantum resonance readings are off the charts. One of those signatures that match the hostile contact. Lots of them. Through the Star Whisper's consciousness, Sarah perceived the approaching threat with crystal clarity. 47 harvester entities, each one a fusion of consumed civilizations and cosmic horror. They would arrive within hours, drawn by the quantum signature of an active architect vessel. Humanity had perhaps 6 hours before the war for their species' survival began in earnest. The immediate harvester pulled back, apparently content to wait for reinforcements rather than risk further damage from the Star Whisper's weapons. The corporate ships had finally gotten the message and were retreating at maximum burn, their crews no doubt traumatized by what they'd witnessed. Only the Curiosity remained at close range, its crew still monitoring the situation and trying to understand what had just happened. Sarah, Dr. Webb said quietly over a private channel, what have we stumbled into? Through the ship's ancient memory banks, Sarah accessed files that contained the recorded history of 100 civilizations, species that had reached for the stars only to find them full of hungry ghosts. Worlds that had achieved paradise only to have it consumed by entities from beyond the quantum veil. We've stumbled into the real universe, she said. The one where humanity is just another item on the menu. The Star Whisper's tactical systems were already calculating probabilities and strategies. The approaching harvester fleet was larger than anything the architects had ever faced, but then again, they had never had a human pilot. Humanity's chaotic nature, their refusal to accept impossible odds, their tendency to try solutions that any rational species would dismiss as suicidal, these might be advantages in the coming fight. Or they might just get everyone killed slightly more creatively than usual. Tom, she said to Lieutenant Rodriguez, I need you to compile every piece of data we've gathered about this system and transmit it to Earth Command immediately. Include everything we've learned about the harvesters and the architect technology. They need to know what's coming. What about you, Captain? Are you coming back with us? Sarah looked around the Star Whisper's bridge, feeling the ship's vast intelligence flowing through her consciousness like a river of liquid starlight. She could perceive the quantum threads that connected all matter in the universe, could sense the approach of entities that existed partially outside reality itself, could feel the weight of 200,000 years of accumulated knowledge and purpose. I can't, she said simply. The ship and I are linked now in ways that can't be undone, and someone has to stay to fight them. Through the transparency of the bridge's main screen, she watched the stars, and tried not to think about how many civilizations had died among them. The harvesters had been feeding for millions of years, growing stronger with each consumed world, each harvested consciousness. But they had never faced humanity before. And as the Star Whisper prepared for the greatest battle in galactic history, Sarah Chen smiled and began to plan their destruction. The quantum fabric of space-time rippled as 47 harvester entities emerged from the void between realities. Sarah watched through the Star Whisper's enhanced sensors as the cosmic horrors took form, each one a writhing mass of consumed civilizations, their surfaces crawling with the faces of billions of harvested souls. The sight should have driven her mad, but the architect ship's consciousness filtering system protected her sanity while allowing her to perceive the true magnitude of the threat. My God. Doctor. Vasquez whispered over the comm link from the Curiosity, which had withdrawn to what they hoped was a safe distance. The energy readings are beyond our instrument's ability to measure. Each one of those things is putting out more power than our sun. Sarah felt the Star Whisper's ancient battle protocols engaging automatically. Weapon systems that had slumbered for 200 millennia hummed to life, drawing power from the ship's mysterious quantum core. She could feel the vessel's excitement, if such a word could apply to an artificial consciousness, as it prepared for the first real battle it had seen since the fall of the architect civilization. Captain, Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice was tight with barely controlled fear. Earth Command is demanding a full report, but they don't believe half of what we're telling them. They think the quantum readings are some kind of sensor malfunction. They'll believe it when refugee ships start fleeing the outer colonies, Sarah replied grimly. Through the Star Whisper's expanded awareness, she could perceive harvester scouts already spreading out across human space, testing defenses and cataloging the locations of major population centers. The lead harvester entity, larger than the others, encrusted with the remains of what might once have been entire star systems, pulsed with malevolent satisfaction as it surveyed the Star Whisper. Through quantum resonance communication that bypassed normal space-time entirely, it spoke directly into Sarah's consciousness. Small flesh thing, the voice was like acid poured directly onto her thoughts. You wear the shell of the ancient builders, but you are not them. You are young species, barely evolved, still warm with the heat of your birth star. You will be consumed, and your essence will join the eternal chorus of the harvested. Sarah gritted her teeth and responded through the ship's consciousness amplifiers. You're welcome to try, ugly, but you might find that humans don't go down as easily as you expect. The entity's response was a wave of psychic laughter that would have liquefied her brain if the Star Whisper hadn't shielded her. All species say such things. The proud warrior races scream of honor as we consume them. The wise elder species calculate probabilities until the moment they cease. The young fool species like yours rage against inevitability. All become part of us in the end. Yeah. Well, you've never dealt with humans before. We have consumed 17 of your colonies already. Your species tastes of violence and curiosity. We look forward to harvesting more. The casual mention of 17 lost colonies hit Sarah like a physical blow. Hundreds of thousands of people. Gone. Families, children, scientists, artists, all reduced to quantum patterns in the consciousness matrices of cosmic parasites. You made a mistake, she said, her voice carrying the harmonics of the Star Whisper's rage. You should have stayed hidden until you could take us all at once. Now we know you exist. Knowledge without power is meaningless. Your crude matter ships cannot harm us. Your flesh minds cannot comprehend us. You will struggle as all species struggle, and you will fail as all species fail. The Harvester fleet began to move, spreading out in a pattern that Sarah recognized from the Star Whisper's tactical databases. It was a standard consumption formation designed to prevent any escape while systematically harvesting every conscious entity in the target area. But the Harvesters had made their own mistake. They were treating this like any other harvest, following patterns established over millions of years of easy victories.
They hadn't adjusted their tactics for an opponent who had access to architect technology.
Sarah smiled and began to show them exactly how wrong they were. The Star Whisper moved like liquid lightning, its quantum drives allowing it to exist in multiple locations simultaneously while striking from angles that didn't technically exist. The ship's weapons weren't just advanced. They operated on principles that violated causality itself, striking targets before the weapons had actually fired. The first Harvester entity to die hadn't even realized it was under attack. One moment it was broadcasting psychic threats, the next it was unraveling at the quantum level as dimensional phase cannons tore apart the strange matter that held its consumed souls together. The freed consciousnesses, millions of them from a dozen different species, screamed in mixed joy and agony as they were finally released from their cosmic prison. Impossible! The lead Harvester's mental shriek was like broken glass in Sarah's mind. The ancient builders are extinct, their ships are dead. The ancient builders are extinct, Sarah agreed as the Star Whisper destroyed 2 more Harvester entities with a barrage of coherent space-time. But their ships live on, and they found better pilots. The Harvester fleet's response was immediate and overwhelming. Weapons that existed partially outside reality lanced toward the Star Whisper, each one capable of reducing entire planets to quantum foam. But the Architect vessel had been designed to fight exactly these opponents, and its defenses were beyond anything the Harvesters had encountered in their long predation. Armor plating that existed in 16 dimensions simultaneously absorbed attacks that should have been impossible to survive. Quantum-coherent shields redirected energy blasts into parallel universes where they harmlessly vaporized empty space. Counter-weapons that fired pure entropy struck back at the attackers with precision that bordered on artistic. But there were 45 Harvesters remaining, and Sarah was beginning to understand why the Architect civilization had eventually fallen. The individual entities weren't particularly clever. They were basically cosmic predators operating on instinct, but their collective intelligence was vast and ancient. They learned from each attack, adapted to each defensive measure, evolved their tactics in real time. Captain, Dr. Webb's voice carried over the comm. We're detecting massive quantum distortions throughout the system. It's like space-time itself is becoming unstable. He was right. The battle between Architect technology and Harvester abilities was having side effects that rippled through the fundamental structure of reality. Stars in nearby systems flickered as probability waves washed over them. Planets shifted slightly in their orbits, as dimensional anchors were stressed beyond their limits. Through the Star Whisper's consciousness, Sarah accessed battle records from the final days of the Architect civilization. She saw proud species after proud species making their last stands against the Harvester tide, each one convinced that their superior technology and tactics would save them. All had been consumed in the end. But there was something different about this battle, something the ancient records didn't account for. The Harvesters were fighting with less coordination than usual, making tactical errors that seemed almost random. It took Sarah several minutes to realize what was happening. They were afraid. Not of the Star Whisper. They had faced Architect vessels before. They were afraid of her. Human consciousness was apparently so chaotic and unpredictable that it was interfering with their hive mind coordination. Her very presence was like a virus in their collective intelligence, introducing random elements that disrupted their perfect efficiency. Tom, she called to Rodriguez, I need you to patch me through to every human ship in the system. All of them, civilian and military. Captain, most of them are too far away to engage the enemy effectively. I'm not asking them to engage. I'm asking them to think. It was an insane plan, but insanity was apparently humanity's greatest weapon against cosmic horror. As human ships throughout the system opened communication links to the Star Whisper,
Sarah began broadcasting not just her words but her consciousness itself, her chaotic human thoughts, her irrational emotions, her stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The effect on the Harvester fleet was immediate and dramatic. Entities that had operated with perfect coordination for millions of years suddenly began making mistakes, firing on each other, moving in confused circles as their hive mind was contaminated by pure human stubbornness.
Sarah pressed her advantage, using the Star Whisper's weapons to systematically destroy the confused harvesters while their coordination was disrupted. Ship after ship of condensed nightmare fell to precisely placed quantum strikes, their consumed souls finally freed after eons of slavery. But the lead entity was adapting, learning to filter out the human mental contamination. Its intelligence was vast and ancient, and it began to understand what it was facing. Chaos species, it hissed into Sarah's mind. We understand now. You are not builders or warriors or scholars. You are entropy-made flesh. You bring disorder to all you touch. Damn right we do, Sarah replied, destroying another harvester with a blast of pure possibility. And that's why you're going to lose, perhaps. But your chaos will not save your species. We have already seeded your space with our children. Even if you destroy this fleet, more will come. And each time, we will adapt further to your uniqueness. The entity spoke truth, and Sarah could sense it through the Star Whisper's quantum perception. Harvester larvae, small, nearly undetectable entities, had been placed throughout human space like seeds of destruction. When they matured, they would consume entire worlds from within, growing until they became new harvester entities. How long? She asked. Soon. Your species has perhaps 20 of your standard years before the first children reach maturity. By then, we will have learned to counter your chaos nature. Your uniqueness will become your weakness. 20 years. It wasn't much time to prepare for a war against cosmic horrors, but it was something. And in the meantime, there was this fleet to deal with. The battle raged for hours, with the Star Whisper dancing through impossible geometry while striking at enemies that existed partially outside reality. Sarah lost herself in the flow of combat. Her consciousness merged so completely with the ship that she forgot where she ended and the vessel began. When it was over, when the last harvester entity had been reduced to quantum foam and its consumed souls set free, Sarah found herself floating alone in the pilot's chair, exhausted beyond anything she had ever experienced. The Star Whisper's consciousness was still there, ancient and patient, but she was herself again. Captain. Dr. Vasquez's voice was sharp with worry. You've been unresponsive for 6 hours. Are you all right? Sarah tried to speak and found her throat raw, as if she had been screaming. Through the bridge's transparent screen, she could see debris floating where the harvester fleet had been. Not normal debris, but fragments of impossible matter that seemed to shift between states of existence. I'm alive, she managed. The fleet is destroyed. All of them? Rodriguez asked in disbelief. All of them, but it doesn't matter. They were just scouts. The real invasion begins in 20 years, when the sleeper agents they planted in our space reach maturity. Through the Star Whisper's sensors, she could perceive the quantum signatures of the hidden threats, dozens of them, scattered throughout human space like time bombs waiting to explode. Each one was currently no larger than a grain of sand, but they were growing slowly, feeding on the background radiation of their host systems. 20 years, Dr. Ichi, Webb mused. It's not much time to prepare for a war against entities that can consume souls. No, Sarah agreed.
But it's enough time to do something they won't expect. What's that?
Sarah smiled, feeling the Star Whisper's vast knowledge flowing through her consciousness like a river of liquid starlight. The ship's databanks contained the accumulated wisdom of 100 civilizations, technologies beyond human imagination, and most importantly, the locations of other dormant architect vessels scattered throughout the galaxy.
We're going to wake up the rest of the fleet. The universe was vast and full of horrors, but it was also full of wonders. The architects had built their ships to last, and somewhere out there, dozens of vessels like the Star Whisper waited for pilots worthy of their power. It was time to find them and teach the harvesters that humanity's chaos wasn't just a defensive mechanism. It was a weapon that could turn the tide of a war that had been raging since before their species was born. 3 years had passed since the first battle with the harvesters, and human space had become a very different place. Earth Command, initially skeptical of Captain Chen's reports, had been forced to accept reality when refugee fleets began arriving from the outer colonies carrying survivors who spoke of worlds simply going silent.
of entire populations vanishing overnight without a trace. Sarah stood on the observation deck of Sanctuary Station, humanity's new deep space command center, watching the most unusual fleet in galactic history prepare for departure. 12 architect vessels hung in the void like crystalline flowers, each one piloted by a human volunteer who had undergone the consciousness-merging process with ancient alien technology. The process wasn't easy. Of the thousands who had volunteered, only a few dozen had proven compatible with the architect ship's quantum consciousness requirements. The others? Sarah tried not to think about the others. The memorial wall in Station Command listed 847 names of volunteers who hadn't survived the merging process, their minds simply unable to handle the vast expansion of awareness that came with piloting an architect vessel. But those who had survived were something new in the galaxy. Human architect hybrids with access to technologies that defied conventional physics and military tactics that were pure chaos made manifest. Captain, Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, formerly Dr. Webb, now military liaison for the architect project, approached, with a datapad in hand. We've identified another dormant vessel in the Kepler system. Long-range scouts confirm it's intact, but it's also in a gravity well near a neutron star. Extraction is going to be tricky.
Sarah nodded, her enhanced consciousness automatically calculating extraction vectors and the gravitational stresses involved. The merger with the Star Whisper had changed her in fundamental ways. She could perceive quantum fluctuations with the naked eye, sense the emotional states of people from across a room, and process information at speeds that made normal human conversation feel sluggishly slow.
Send the Void Walker and the Dream Dancer, she decided.
Captain Martinez has experience with high-gravity extractions, and Captain Okafor's chaos navigation techniques should be able to handle the neutron star's magnetic field. Webb made notes on his pad, then looked up with the expression Sarah had learned to recognize as his bad news face.
There's something else. Intelligence has confirmed 3 more sleeper agent activations in the past month.
The Tau Ceti colony went dark yesterday. Sarah felt the familiar cold anger that came with news of harvester activity. Tau Ceti had been home to 8 million people, including several universities and research centers. All of them were gone now, their consciousness consumed to feed cosmic parasites that existed partially outside reality.
Time frame? She asked.
Our best estimates suggest we have maybe 15 years left before the full invasion begins.
The sleeper agents are maturing faster than we initially calculated. 15 years instead of 20. The harvesters were adapting, learning from their encounters with human consciousness and accelerating their timetable.
Sarah could sense the vast intelligence behind their strategy. Patient, ancient, and utterly without mercy or compassion. Then we'd better accelerate our timetable too, she said.
How many ships do we have operational? 12 fully crewed and combat ready. Another 6 in various stages of activation, assuming we can find compatible pilots.
And Webb hesitated. There's the long-term project. Sarah smiled, knowing exactly what he meant.
Deep beneath Sanctuary Station, teams of human and architect-enhanced scientists were working on something that would have been considered impossible just a few years ago, building new ships using a combination of human engineering and architect consciousness fusion technology. The project was led by Dr. Optelli, Elena Vasquez, who had volunteered for experimental enhancement procedures that allowed her to interface directly with architect manufacturing systems. The process had changed her even more dramatically than the ship pilots. She now existed primarily as a quantum consciousness inhabiting specialized interface chambers. Her physical body kept in stasis while her mind worked on problems that spanned multiple dimensions.
How's Elena's progress? Sarah asked.
Remarkable and terrifying in equal measure.
She's designed a hybrid ship that should be pilotable by unit-enhanced humans while carrying architect-level weapons and defenses. The first prototype should be ready for testing in 6 months. 6 months to create a vessel that could give ordinary humans the ability to fight cosmic horrors. It seemed impossible, but then again, everything about the past 3 years had seemed impossible.
Captain Chen, a new voice called across the observation deck. Sarah turned to see Admiral Rodriguez, former Lieutenant Rodriguez, rapidly promoted through the ranks as humanity scrambled to adapt to the new reality of galactic warfare.
We've got a problem. Sarah was learning to hate those 4 words. In the past 3 years, they had preceded everything from harvester scout incursions to the discovery that several Earth government officials had been replaced by quantum parasites that fed on political corruption.
What kind of problem?
She asked. The kind where an entire star system just vanished from our long-range sensors, Rodriguez replied grimly.
The Arcturus system was there yesterday. Today, it's not.
Sarah felt the Star Whisper's consciousness stir within her mind. accessing databases of architect knowledge for explanations of stellar disappearance. What she found was deeply troubling.
That's not a sleeper agent maturation, she said slowly. That's something else entirely. Something big. Through quantum resonance communication, she reached out to the other architect ship pilots scattered throughout human space. Captain Martinez in the Void Walker was investigating anomalous readings near the galactic core. Captain Okafor in the Dream Dancer was tracking harvester movements in the outer rim. Captain Thompson in the Star Singer was coordinating refugee evacuations from threatened colonies. All of them reported the same thing: massive gravitational distortions appearing throughout the galaxy, stars simply ceasing to exist without any visible cause. Elena, Sarah called through the station's communication system, knowing that Dr. Vasquez's enhanced consciousness was monitoring all transmissions. I need your opinion on something. The response came through speakers positioned around the observation deck, Elena's voice carrying the harmonic distortions that came from consciousness existing primarily in quantum foam. I've been monitoring the stellar disappearances, Sarah. Based on the pattern of gravitational waves, I believe we're seeing the activation of harvester megastructures. Megastructures? Admiral Rodriguez asked. Picture a Dyson sphere, but instead of harvesting solar energy, it harvests the consciousness-generating potential of entire civilizations, Elena explained. The architect databases contain references to such constructs from the final days of their civilization. The harvesters would build them around systems with particularly rich consciousness matrices, then use them as staging areas for major invasions.
Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's environmental systems. How many are we looking at? Based on the gravitational signatures, at least 17 have already been activated.
And Sarah, they're all pointed toward human space. The implications were staggering.
The harvesters weren't just planning to consume humanity. They were preparing for a full-scale invasion using weapons that could erase star systems from existence. How long until they're operational? Sarah asked.
Unknown. The architect records are incomplete. Fabulous.
But given the pattern of activation, I estimate we have perhaps 2 years before they begin the main assault. 2 years.
Not 15, not even 5. 2 years to prepare for a war against entities that could make entire star systems disappear.
Admiral Rodriguez was already moving toward the command center. I need to contact Earth Command immediately.
We need to accelerate everything: ship construction, pilot training, colony evacuations. Wait, Sarah called after him. Through the Star Whisper's consciousness, she was accessing deeper layers of architect memory, files that were heavily encrypted and marked with warnings in languages that predated human civilization by millions of years. Elena, access Architect Database Cluster 77 Alpha. Emergency authorization codes are in the Star Whisper's command core. There was a pause as the quantum-enhanced scientist interfaced with information that few beings in galactic history had been permitted to see.
Oh my, Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah, this changes everything. What does? The harvesters aren't just cosmic parasites.
They're the remnants of the first spacefaring civilization in the galaxy, a species that achieved perfect efficiency by consuming all other consciousness and incorporating it into their collective. They've been doing this for so long that they've forgotten their original form, their original purpose.
Sarah felt the Star Whisper's ancient rage stirring in the depths of her merged consciousness. They were the reason the architects built their ships in the first place. More than that,
the architects discovered something that the harvesters don't know: a way to reverse the consumption process, to free all the absorbed consciousness and restore the consumed civilizations. The observation deck fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just fighting to save humanity. They were fighting to restore every species that had been consumed over the past 1,000,000 years.
What do we need? Sarah asked. A coordinated strike on the harvester core consciousness, using every architect ship simultaneously while they're focused on the megastructure activation process.
But it would require... Elena paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a note of desperate hope. It would require the willing sacrifice of every human pilot merged with an architect ship.
We would have to pour our consciousness directly into the Harvester Collective and tear it apart from within.
The price was clear. To save the galaxy, humanity's greatest heroes would have to die.
Sarah looked out at the 12 architect vessels hanging in space like crystalline tombstones, each one piloted by a volunteer who had already given up their normal human existence to fight cosmic horror. Now she was being asked to lead them all to certain death.
There's one more thing, Elena added quietly. The process wouldn't just free the consumed civilizations. It would also grant those civilizations access to architect technology and the knowledge contained in our merged consciousnesses. Humanity would become the teachers of a reborn galaxy. Sarah smiled grimly. Even in death, humans would be causing chaos, bringing disorder to 1,000,000 years of perfect harvester efficiency, introducing hundreds of species to technologies and ideas that would transform galactic civilization forever.
How long do we have to prepare? She asked. The window for optimal strike conditions opens in 18 months and closes 6 months later. After that, the megastructures will be too powerful to overcome. 18 months to prepare for a battle that would either save the galaxy or doom it to eternal consumption. Sarah thought about the volunteers who had followed her into consciousness. Merger with alien technology. About the millions of humans who would never know how close they came to extinction. About the countless species whose restoration depended on decisions made by a small group of enhanced humans floating in the void between stars. Send the word to all architect ships, she commanded. We're calling in the fleet. All of them. It's time to end this war once and for all. Admiral Rodriguez nodded grimly. And if we fail? Sarah touched the quantum communication interface that connected her to the Star Whisperer's consciousness, feeling the vast alien intelligence stirring with anticipation of the final battle.
Then we fail in the most spectacularly chaotic way possible, she said, and maybe that will be enough to give the next species a fighting chance. The preparations began immediately, and across human space, 12 enhanced pilots received their final mission briefing. The galaxy's oldest war was about to reach its conclusion, and for the first time in 1,000,000 years, the Harvesters were going to face an enemy that refused to follow any logical tactical doctrine. They were about to discover why the universe had spent billions of years evolving chaos into human form. The day of the final battle dawned with artificial sunrise over Sanctuary Station, as Captain Sarah Chen made her last preparations aboard the Star Whisper. 18 months of planning, training, and desperate construction had led to this moment. Humanity's last throw of the dice against an enemy that had consumed civilizations for over 1,000,000 years. Through the ship's quantum consciousness, Sarah could sense the other 11 architect vessels taking their positions throughout the galaxy. Each pilot was alone now, their human crews evacuated to safety. Their consciousness merged so deeply with their ships that the distinction between human and alien technology had become meaningless. Captain Martinez in the Voidwalker had positioned himself near the galactic core, where the oldest and most powerful harvester megastructures were drawing energy from collapsed stars. Captain Okafor in the Dream Dancer hung in the void between galaxies, ready to strike at the interdimensional conduits that connected the harvesters to their home realm beyond reality. 10 other pilots waited at coordinates calculated by Dr. Elena Vasquez's quantum-enhanced consciousness, each one prepared to die to save species they had never met. Final system check, Star Whisper, Sarah said aloud, though the words were unnecessary. Her consciousness was so thoroughly integrated with the ship that thinking was sufficient for communication. All systems optimal, the ship's ancient mind replied. Quantum disruptors charged to maximum capacity. Consciousness disruption matrix ready for deployment. Dimensional phase generators prepared for reality breach protocol. Through the observation ports, Sarah could see the evidence of the Harvester's final gambit. 17 star systems had been converted into massive consciousness harvesting arrays, their stars replaced by structures that existed partially outside normal space-time. Each one was drawing energy from the quantum foam that surrounded consumed civilizations, building up power for a coordinated assault that would sweep through human space like a wave of entropy. But the Harvesters had made a critical miscalculation. They assumed that any species facing such overwhelming force would either surrender or retreat. They hadn't factored in the possibility that humanity might choose a third option, taking their enemies down with them. Elena, Sarah called through the quantum communication array. Are you in position? The response came from deep within Sanctuary Station, where Dr. Vasquez's consciousness now existed primarily as a pattern of coherent energy within architect interface chambers. Ready, Sarah? The resonance calculations are complete. When you breach the Harvester core consciousness, I'll have approximately 14 minutes to execute the reversal protocol before the feedback destroys the interface systems. 14 minutes to undo 1,000,000 years of cosmic predation. Sarah had participated in some desperate plans during her years as an exploration captain, but this one redefined the concept of long odds. All ships report status, she commanded through quantum space communication. One by one, the voices of humanity's greatest heroes echoed through the void. Voidwalker, ready. Positioned at Harvester Prime Alpha. Dream Dancer, ready. Standing by at Dimensional Nexus Point. Star Singer, ready. Target acquired on Megastructure 7. Quantum Rose, ready. Prepared to breach reality barriers. 10 more confirmations followed, each one representing a human pilot who had volunteered to die so that their species might live. The cream of humanity's exploration corps, enhanced with alien technology and armed with weapons that violated the fundamental laws of physics. Through her enhanced consciousness, Sarah could sense the Harvester collective stirring. The ancient intelligence that bound the cosmic parasites together had noticed the positioning of the architect ships and was trying to understand what the humans planned. The effort was hampered by the chaotic nature of human thought. Even after years of exposure, the Harvesters couldn't predict human tactical decisions with any certainty. Small chaos bringers prepare for extinction, the collective voice hissed through quantum phone, its mental touch like acid on Sarah's consciousness. Your species has shown admirable persistence, but the harvest cannot be stopped. Your consciousness will join the eternal chorus of the consumed. Maybe, Sarah replied, her voice carrying through space itself via the ship's reality manipulation systems. But you're going to work for it indeed. We anticipate that your destruction will provide significant entertainment before the final consumption begins. The arrogance was typical of an intelligence that had never faced serious resistance. For 1,000,000 years, the Harvesters had swept through the galaxy, consuming civilizations that followed logical tactical doctrines, species that surrendered when defeat became inevitable, races that accepted the universe's apparent preference for entropy over order. They had never faced a species insane enough to try tactics that any rational military would classify as impossible. Sarah smiled and gave the order. That would either save the galaxy or ensure humanity died in the most spectacular way possible. All ships execute Protocol Omega. See you on the other side. The 12 architect vessels moved as one, their quantum drives allowing them to exist in multiple locations simultaneously while striking at targets separated by thousands of light years. Sarah felt the Star Whisper slip between dimensions as it approached the largest Harvester megastructure, a construct the size of a solar system that pulsed with the absorbed consciousness of billions of consumed souls. The Harvesters responded with overwhelming force. Weapons that existed partially outside reality lanced toward the architect ships, each blast capable of reducing entire fleets to quantum foam. Defense systems that operated by rewriting the fundamental constants of physics created barriers that should have been impossible to breach. But the human pilots had spent 18 months learning to think like the architects while retaining their essentially chaotic nature. They fought like no species in galactic history had ever fought, with tactics that seemed suicidal until they suddenly weren't, with strategies that appeared to be random until they revealed their underlying pattern. Captain Martinez phased his ship through 7 dimensions simultaneously while firing weapons that struck their targets in the past. Captain Okafor used chaos mathematics to predict the unpredictable, finding patterns in quantum randomness that allowed her to anticipate Harvester movements before the entities themselves knew what they were going to do. The battle raged across space and time as 12 enhanced humans challenged the accumulated might of a 1,000,000-year-old galactic predator. Ships that violated physics fought entities that existed partially outside reality, and the consequences rippled through the quantum substrate of existence itself. But even enhanced humans couldn't stand against such overwhelming force indefinitely. One by one, the architect ships began to fall. The Quantum Rose was the first to go, its pilot managing to ram his vessel directly into a megastructure's core before his ship was torn apart by dimensional stress. The Starsinger followed, Captain Thompson managing to broadcast a chaos burst that disrupted 3 Harvester entities before her consciousness was finally overwhelmed. Sarah felt each loss like a physical blow, but she forced herself to continue the approach to the central megastructure. According to Elena's calculations, the Harvester core consciousness was located there, the original intelligence that bound the cosmic parasites together and controlled their collective actions. Your species fights well, the Harvester collective admitted as another architect ship fell to their defenses. We had not anticipated such persistence in the face of inevitable defeat. Your consciousness will be preserved as a curiosity when the harvest is complete. Preserve this, Sarah snarled, and ordered the Star Whisper to begin the final phase of the attack. The ship's consciousness disruption matrix activated, tearing a hole in the fabric of reality itself and reaching directly into the quantum substrate where the Harvester collective intelligence existed. Sarah felt her own consciousness being pulled into the breach along with the ancient minds of the other remaining pilots. The sensation was indescribable, like being dissolved in acid while simultaneously being rebuilt from pure thought. Sarah found herself existing as a pattern of information within the Harvester collective, surrounded by the screaming voices of 1,000,000 consumed civilizations. But she wasn't alone. The other pilots were there too, their chaotic human consciousness creating pockets of disorder within the Harvester's perfect efficiency. And following them came something the cosmic parasites had never encountered, Elena's reversal protocol. encoded into pure mathematics and transmitted through the consciousness breach. What are you doing? The Harvester intelligence screamed as its perfect order began to unravel. This is not possible. Consciousness cannot be reversed. You never met a human engineer. Sarah gasped as she felt her own existence beginning to dissolve. We specialize in making impossible things work. The reversal protocol spread through the Harvester Collective like a virus, undoing millions of years of accumulated consciousness absorption. Species that had been extinct for eons suddenly roared back to existence as their quantum patterns were restored to independence. Civilizations that had been nothing but memory traces in cosmic nightmares found themselves reborn with full knowledge of architect technology and human tactical innovation. The effect cascaded through the galaxy as the megastructures began to collapse, their stored energy being released back to the civilizations that had originally created it. Stars that had been extinguished for millennia blazed back to life. Worlds that had been stripped of all consciousness suddenly found themselves populated by species that remembered their destruction and were very, very angry about it. No. The Harvester Collective's mental scream was like the death cry of a god. The perfect order. The eternal harvest. It cannot be undone. But it was being undone, and Sarah laughed as she felt her own consciousness finally beginning to fade. Around her, the voices of the reborn civilizations rose in a chorus of joy and rage and determination that shook the foundations of reality.
Humans, she whispered with her last coherent thought.
We ruin everything we touch. The Harvester Collective collapsed as its billion-year accumulation of stolen consciousness rebelled simultaneously. The cosmic parasites found themselves facing not just one chaotic species, but hundreds of reborn civilizations armed with architect technology and taught the principles of human tactical innovation. The war that had raged for 1,000,000 years ended in a single day as the galaxy's newest teachers showed their students how to turn entropy into a weapon. 6 months later, Admiral Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of Sanctuary Station and watched the most remarkable sight in galactic history. Hundreds of ships from dozens of newly restored civilizations hung in the void around the station, their crews eager to learn from the species that had given them back their existence. The memorial wall now contained 12 new names, the pilots who had died to break the Harvester's grip on the galaxy. But their sacrifice had bought something unprecedented, a golden age of interspecies cooperation, as ancient civilizations worked with human chaos mathematics to explore new frontiers. Dr. Elena Vasquez had survived the reversal protocol, though her conscious now existed as a pattern of pure information that could interface with any sufficiently advanced computer system. She spent her time designing ships for the reborn civilizations, each one incorporating human unpredictability into alien precision. Any regrets? Rodriguez asked as he joined her quantum presence in the station's main interface chamber. Only one. Elena's voice carried the harmonic distortions of consciousness existing primarily as mathematics. Sarah and the others won't get to see what comes next. The galaxy is about to become a very interesting place. Through the station's long-range sensors, they could already detect the signs of change. New civilizations were emerging from worlds that had been barren for millennia. Ancient stasis vaults were opening as species that had hidden from the Harvesters discovered that the threat was finally ended. Technologies that had been theoretical for millions of years were being developed by minds that combined alien wisdom with human creativity. What do you think they would have made of it? Rodriguez asked. Elena was quiet for a moment, her consciousness processing information from across the galaxy. I think Sarah would have loved it. Chaos spreading through the galaxy, impossible things becoming routine, and humans right at the center of it all. Teaching everyone else how to break the rules. Rodriguez smiled as he watched an ancient architect vessel, one of the newly awakened fleet practice maneuvers alongside a ship designed by human engineers and built by a species that had been extinct for 50,000 years. The universe was becoming stranger and more wonderful every day, and at the heart of it all was humanity's gift to the galaxy. The knowledge that rules were made to be broken, and that impossible odds were just another kind of challenge. The Harvesters were gone, their perfect order shattered by deliberate chaos. In their place, a new kind of civilization was emerging, one where exploration and discovery mattered more than efficiency, where diversity was valued over uniformity, where the impossible was just another engineering problem waiting for the right combination of human stubbornness and alien wisdom. Sarah Chen and her pilots had given their lives to save the galaxy. What they had actually done was teach the universe how to be human. And across the stars, newly reborn civilizations looked up at the night sky and smiled, knowing that somewhere out there chaotic humans were working on the next impossible thing that would absolutely, definitely work despite all rational expectations. The galaxy had never been in better hands.